Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Barcast TV and to a special top 10 tips for new bar players. So, this is part two in a two-part series. If you haven't seen the first episode, go ahead, pause the game, head over to Brightworks channel. I'll leave the link to his channel in the description. And you can see part one to this series. And without further ado, why don't you introduce yourself, Brightworks?
Hey there, everyone. I'm Brightworks from Brightworks Gaming, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on your channel. Excited to talk about these tips to help these noobs get better at the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, we can get into topic number 6 for new players, and that would be scouting. So scouting would be like what units to use, where on the map, like what targets you can see, and this applies both for like 1v1s and 8v8 games. So do you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I have a lot of thoughts
on scouting.
I have a lot of thoughts about this. I'm very, very passionate about scouting. My bombing tutorials, I emphasize it over and over. You need to scout for where your enemy is, for those economy structures, right? Those are super important to target down. Using scouts to determine where players are on the map and to harass early on, super important. And also figuring out what players are where.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Bard does this really interesting mechanic in those big 8v8 matches where the strongest, highest rated player, I believe on one team would be red, and then on the opposite team it would be blue. So you can easily distinguish with your scouting. It's like, well, am I in the same lane against the 42 level true skill of my opponent? So you really want to be aware of that.
Yeah, it's good to figure that out because if there's any time to communicate and ask for help from your team, it's going to be early on in the game so that everyone knows, like, hey, I'm going up against a pro here. I'm good, but I'm not that good, and I'm going to need some help with that. So really, really important to figure that out.
Buying time, you should say, before it eventually overwhelms you.
Yeah, you're holding your lane versus the lane that's going to win the push. Yeah, I agree, and I think it's touching on that scouting thing for the economy, scouting for economy structures that are prone to destruction. I think it's also important because it lets you know who is going to be a weaker link as well. Because it's just as relevant to know that you're up against a weaker player versus the stronger player. Because you know that they might forget a laser turret, they might not build quite as many units, and you can take advantage of that really, really nicely.
Yeah, furthermore, when we've kind of arrived and decided to attack an opponent, it's always best to kind of see what you're walking into, I suppose. And a lot of units can shoot farther than they can actually see, right? So it becomes really important to scout, potentially where you're going to be attacking, and is it going to be vulnerable enough that you're going to get a favorable trade. So scouting information can tell you so much about, or make your decisions easier in this, relatively. I mean, it's a complex game, right? So you need the most information available to you, so utilize the tools you have.
Yeah, so talking about individual units here, just to give examples of good scout units, we have a few already out on the field here. We have the Rover for Armada, that's a T1 vehicle that you can build. We have the Rascal for Cortex, which is again a T1 vehicle. And everyone is very familiar, and probably infamously so, with the Tick from Armada, which is the T1 Bot Lab Scoutcraft or scouting unit. Mm-hmm. Very, very dangerous unit, but very useful for sure. And then you have the Blink and the Finch for Armada and Cortex, respectively for their aerial scouting. Both really good units. Both fill the same sort of niche, and both do a great job of scouting out the enemy defenses. So if you're looking to build some scoutcraft, some early scouting units, those are the ones that you're probably looking to build.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, in future iterations of this video series, we'll be covering the middle and late game. We can talk more in depth about what scouting looks like, in mid and late game and what tools you have at your disposal, to accomplish that. So it becomes, I would say, more important as the game goes on. And we can't, I don't want to get too far into it, but like you need to know if your opponent has an anti-nuke, if your opponent is building a nuke silo. So
Yep.
it becomes really important.
Yes, it does. It becomes complicated very quickly too, because you need to know what you're scouting for. But again, yeah, that'll all come in time. For now, just know that you need to make some of those scouts. They'll be very helpful. You'll want vision, and they'll give it to you as much as you need.
Mm-hmm.
Now the next topic up,
with
sort of
practice.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say with practice you'll get better and better at it. So don't feel bad if you as a new bar player that you're not getting all the information you might need. Just give it a go. You'll get better at it with time. So
Practice makes
sorry.
perfect.
Would you like to introduce our next topic? Yeah.
Yeah. So the next topic, it actually kind of goes into the same field of thought, and it's radar coverage. Very, very important to throw up those early radars, because they're going to tell you they're your early warning system. In fact, I think they're named early warning system, like their actual canonical name in the game. Yeah, early warning system, and they're also transportable. Didn't know that, but there you go. They're going to let you know that those units are coming early enough that you can actually mount a defense, or at the very least posture your units in such a way that the enemy isn't going to want to harass your line. Did you have any notes about these radars?
Yeah, and we can, really demonstrate how good these pros are at putting these radars. So you can see with this one we have selected just how far into the middle of the map that radar coverage goes. It goes down to that little ramp, so we can see units approaching our side of the map. And as a newer player, it can be difficult and frustrating to deal with these early game run-bys or harassing. And a properly placed radar will give you ample time to position your units to defend.
Yeah, we can even see the radar picking up a scout vehicle over here, where normally that would be out of vision range and it might even be able to sneak into the back line. But because he had the radar here, he can now send the incisor over to deal with that rover. So yeah, those radars can be very important. Now, as far as actually using them, it's important to remember that there are certain line of sight blockers. So that would be any terrain deformations. I guess you might call them a mountain or a hill if you were a normal human being. Anything like that is going to decrease or rather block the area. And so you can see it's sort of like a shadow on the ground that is produced by the blockage from this mountain. And you can see that if you position them correctly, you can overlap your fields in such a way that it doesn't hinder the radar profile. So if we select, I guess it won't show if we select both of them. But you can see that this radar covers this half of this mountain right here, and this radar covers the other half. So not that this mountain is any sort of strategic point per se, but it is important to make sure that you have that full radar coverage by covering all your mountains. Of course, putting them on top of mountains is very nice. It's going to help them have a better radar profile, because there's going to be less shadow, and they're going to be able to see over everything. I think that's all I had to say about the radars, though.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't emphasize enough as a new player how important it is to add these structures. When you're expanding, as you kind of control more and more of the map, you want to be placing these, like, kind of as you push out onto the map, you want to be placing these radar structures. I mean, we can see just how close Randy has chosen to make these two on the left side of the map. We have one in the main base and one pretty much directly below it, and there's three on the left side of the map. We can see just one right after another, and as he's moving forward, creeping forward onto the map like we see, he's just adding radars as he goes along. So you can see these top level players are really leaning on the strength of this structure so hard, and without it you can't make proper decisions or informed decisions about where to move on the map to defend your early game economy.
Yeah, they grant you so much tactical information, especially about posturing like this. I mean, you can see this because of the scouting, which of course we talked about earlier, but also this radar would be giving him a blop or several blops of blue dots telling him exactly where these are. Oh, there we go. Thank you for doing that, Midfit. Demonstrate our point. Very nice. Yeah, that posturing is really important, because you need to know where to put your units and whether you can actually afford to move them around and attack a different area, or whether you need them in one spot to deny an enemy push. So build radars. That's the name of the note. Build radars. Do you want to talk about our next one?
Radars. Yeah, absolutely. This is if we can look in the top left hand side of the map, we can see the mini map, and we can see units that are appear on our radar even, let alone just the actual vision range of our units. And this is the next topic would be like mini-map peripheral vision, we can call it. And this is, I would say, like a soft skill for any RTS player is kind of seeing this mini-map. And I'm sure some of you may know, like you've been watching a replay perhaps, or you've seen a cast of another game, and just how good some players are at noticing radar signatures or little things that move across the mini-map that they might not actually be specifically looking at on your screen. I know in bar you can zoom out really far, so it becomes a lot easier to see everything kind of moving and happening at the same time. But if you're zoomed in and on your mini-map there's a radar signature that you can't actually see, well, it can behoove you as an RTS player to kind of develop this soft skill, mini-map peripheral vision. And a way to do that, it can kind of become like a muscle memory. So, as a newer player, kind of pick an arbitrary thing you do a lot of, like say anytime you move your tanks or reposition your tanks, just glance at the mini-map real quick and just take note of what's happening. And eventually over time you'll stop relying on just glancing on it every time you move your tanks, or say like add an LLT or select your commander. You'll just kind of develop this, you'll be looking at the mini-map unconsciously even in your peripheral vision, so to speak. And do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I just think that's a phenomenal idea. That's such a, I mean, I think that would work as a life hack, right? I feel like people could get their lives together by following that advice, right? Every time you brush your teeth, put $1 in your bank account or in your savings account or something. I don't know. But I think that's such a powerful strategy to memorize and learn things. And I think it absolutely applies here. I have nothing but agreeance for how impactful that mini-map peripheral can be. You get early warning about enemy attacks. You don't have to look away from the battle you're microing to know that there's an attack coming on your northern side. You can just select some units, click them on the map, because you can control units through the minimap, I believe. I can't, obviously, but I believe you can do that. And then you can address attacks basically without having to actually divert all of your APM away from whatever's actively going on. Like, this is a pretty important fight here. We don't want to take too much focus off of it. But if we lose our entire economy because we're too focused on it, then what was the point of fighting this fight in the first place? So yeah, develop that minimap peripheral vision and use that trick. Associate it with something you do a lot. I know for me it would probably be queuing up units in my lab, because I like to manually queue units a lot. And if it wasn't that, it'd be every time I look back at my lab to manage my economy. I think those are two things that happen often enough that I would probably be able to develop some sort of habit of checking my minimap more often.
And this will benefit you not only in your 1v1 matchups, but of course in these big 8v8 matches. If you're kind of developing awareness of the minimap, you can see what's happening to your teammates, right? Are they caving? Are they pushing? So really kind of allows you to get more and more information without really dedicating, I suppose, like the mental capacity to kind of look and glance and see what's going on.
Yeah, spares your APM. I think a lot of players struggle with that APM stall. my favorite term for when you run out of APM to control your units and everything.
So would you like to introduce our next topic?
Sure. Yeah, this is another topic that I absolutely have to advocate for, and it's communicating with your teammates. Now, obviously, this is less important in a 1v1. There's less teammates to communicate with. But in those big 8v8 games, which is probably where you're going to want to start if you're a newer player, I would say make sure that you talk to your teammates, because more likely than not, there's going to be some experienced folk in that game, and they're going to have some tips for you, and probably even some requests of you, things that they would like to see you do. And those are probably good ideas to follow. I mean, most of the time, generally, right? Not every time, but a lot of the time, they're going to be helpful, and they're going to be willing to tell you some tips and help you through the game. It's also important for letting them know what you're going for, right? You need to let your teammates know if you're going vehicles and you have a lane partner, they're probably going to want to go bots so that you can have those res bots and the strength of the vehicles out. If you're going air, you need to let your team know about that so that they know that they're going to be down a player on the ground, essentially. All these things that are really necessary to communicate about, and we'll get into the important things, the actual items of discussion that you need to talk to your team about in other videos. But for now, just remember that you absolutely need to communicate with your team. It's a team game, and well, at least the team games are the team games. Free for all and 1v1 are a different story. But in those team games, you need to work with your teammates, and you're going to have a better time. You're going to win more matches, and your teammates are going to like you a whole lot more. And it's gonna even if you lose a match, you're going to be a lot more happy. That's my piece on team communication.
I could add a couple things. I will say that Bar has a lot of great tools to communicate with your teammates outside of just typing in the text box. So we have like the drawing tool, we have the pinging tool you can use to communicate. So yeah, an app demonstration, of course.
There
It's
we
like
go.
you can communicate with yeah, absolutely. So these are things you want to be aware of in the game and know how to control and use to your advantage. So like, you quickly want to, demonstrate like I'm going to be expanding here. I see a lot of players do that, type pinging like, oh, I need help. They'll just send a ping that says, look here. Perhaps, they're sending in a drop ship. They're making a bombing run, what have you. So really great tools at your disposal.
I agree.
Then lastly, of course, lastly, of course, it'd be like be respectful to other players and maybe as an
yeah.
If you need help, yeah, ask for it. If you're asking for help and aren't getting it, you don't flame in the chat or be a spaz and be rude to people. It's like you're not gonna win any favors or you're gonna develop a bad reputation for yourself. And it's in these it's a small community for that, and you'll develop a name for yourself. So be respectful, of course. I mean, I don't know if I have to really say that, but
no, you do.
It'll go a long way.
You do. It's a lot of people underestimate that. You come from big games, big AAA games, and you don't realize how small the bar community really is. Like a lot of these players are gonna recognize you, and it'd be a lot better if they recognize you for a good thing than a bad thing. You want to be recognized for your plays and your good games, not your incessant spamming of the ping tool. It's going to be very, very unfriendly. Yeah, be respectful. I just wanted to add really quickly the actual controls for using those communication resources. It's by default, it's just the Q key to do everything. So if you hold Q and you left click and you drag, that's going to give you your drawing tool. So I'm drawing these circles, these little smiley faces, all that sort of stuff. If you left click, if you hold Q and you just left click, you hold Q and you middle click. Whoops, there we go. That's going to give you a ping with no text or anything. It's just a notification, and it pops up on the minimap here. If you pay attention to the minimap, and I click that, you can see there's a little box that kind of animates and shows you where that ping was. That ties into that peripheral vision, right? If you don't have that, you're not going to notice your teammates' pings. But once you start looking at the minimap, it becomes a lot easier to find out where those pings are. And then finally, the last thing is the labels that you can put down, where you can actually attach text to a ping of some sort. So to do that, you just hold Q and then double left click, and that's going to let you write things out. Hello there, to quote Obi-Wan himself. But yeah, that's the last note I had to add.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of players use that to like ping like reclaim fields, like, hey, like scoop this up, this is important, stuff of that nature, or like calling out anti-nuke locations. That might be a good ping. So like put a marker on the map. So if you lose your actual visual confirmation, the actual location on the map. So it can be a great tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are things to communicate, and that ties into scouting as well. Once you scout, communicate. A lot of these go together, but you put it all together, and you're gonna feel a lot better about your Beyond All Reason game. And your teammates are going to like you a whole lot more too.
Mm.
Going to make you feel like a better teammate.
Yeah.
Quite a mess this game has devolved into. Bases have been destroyed. Units are everywhere. Hard to tell who's where. quite a messy game. You do have to see it. You want to talk about the last one? This is a point that I think is super important.
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's more or less like, as a newer player, I would encourage you to, when we're playing team games, is to pick the front roll. And really it kind of serves two purposes. And the first one is, it's like, if you're a new player, well, you're bad at the roles essentially that other positions on the map offer. You'll see naturally on certain maps in 8v8 games, there's a dedicated C player, there's an air player, there's someone in the back line who has the opportunity to eco and tech more so than the front player. And if you're playing in these 8v8 games and you're a new player and you want to pick one of these roles, it's like it can really be to the detriment of your team to be bad at these roles when it's so important to be good at them, especially the air player. It's so important to have a good air player. And if there's a skill mismatch, it'll be completely exploited by the other player, by the other team, and you'll probably end up losing for it.
Yep. So the takeaway here is start playing the front. Have some confidence, build up that muscle memory of playing the front line in these team games. And once you have that developed, right, you have your builds figured out for the front lines, you're gonna feel a lot better. Just in the way that you now are comfortable with what you should call out and how to defend things. And then after you build up that practice, then it's time to start thinking about, okay, maybe I'll try backlining, maybe I'll play air, maybe I'll play navy, but definitely build up that repertoire of maybe I should say comfort. Maybe comfort is a better level. Build a comfort playing the front lines, and you'll feel a lot better. Your teammates will be happy, and everyone will be happy, and usually that leads to a better game overall, win or lose.
Yeah, absolutely. And being comfortable as a frontline player really comes down to being in your lane, expanding towards your opponent, and producing units. So if you can get comfortable with expanding, with producing units as a new bar player, this will tie into giving you this ticket to be an air player, to be a C player, to eco properly, to go for the 12-minute nuke rush. So like, you'll need the ticket.
Yes. Yeah, it's like we were talking about earlier with reputations. Bar is still definitely small enough that you can build up an individual reputation for being good or bad enough to be or not be allowed to tech or air or nuke rush or whatever the strategy is going to be. Mm-hmm. So definitely work on that part of the game. And the other thing is that there's no surplus of frontliners, right? There will always be a frontline position available, and if you're comfortable with that, then you're not going to have a bad time every time that you're forced to take a frontline position. It'll be much more comfortable, and yeah, I really do think you'll have much better games. You'll have a lot more fun. It's kind of counterintuitive because you think you're a bad player, so you should hide in the back so that you're not obstructing your team, but realistically, it's actually more obstructive to put yourself in the back where a better player could be doing a lot more. But I think that's all I have to say.
It can really hurt your team.
Yeah.
Maybe one final thought would be, like, if you are a new bar player and you're kind of taking this advice to pick the front, go ahead and write that in the chat. Just be like, hey, I'm new. I think I should play front, and I guarantee you, the more experienced players on the team will say, go right ahead, get in there.
Yeah.
They won't be so surprised to see you losing, and as opposed to being a new player, picking that air slot and then doing it terribly, and then everyone's flaming you in the chat because, like, what are you doing? We're 10 minutes into the game, and you're like,
yeah,
what are you doing?
Yeah, you'll receive a lot more love from your teammates for sure. And I think that's it. I think that's the next 5 tips to improve your Beyond All Reason game. Hope that gives you more confidence. I know if I had learned these tips early on in the game, rather than getting flamed by my teammates. It might have been a little more comfortable. So I hope this spares you, and I hope it gives you more confidence going forward. Do you have any final notes?
No, not. Just really thanks for watching, Brightworks. Thanks for collaborating with me on this. I know we spent a lot of time together kind of talking about these beforehand, so I think that was time well spent, and I really looking forward to making the mid-game and late-game series for our top 10 tips for new players.
So stay tuned. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Make sure you're tuned in to Barcast TV here, and make sure that you keep your eyes peeled for those videos if you want to learn more about the other parts of this game. Early game super important because that's where most of the games go. I mean, you can see this game we're 24 minutes in and we're still using T1 vehicles. But we'll have that content out for you shortly, so that you can be well educated in all the different aspects of the game. Thanks a ton for watching. Thanks a ton for collaborating. And I guess we'll see you all in the next video.